Hi. What if you can smell something burning, but everyone around you keeps on telling you that there's no fire? What should you believe? Should you trust your senses, or should you abandon your senses, everything that's telling you physically there's a fire, and accept that what other people are telling you is true? This is sort of situation a person with schizophrenia has to face when they are confronted with the idea that actually what they are seeing, what they're experiencing, isn't really real. Now, when we look at this, when we look to try and understand this from the cognitive approach, we see that actually people need that support to recognize what is real, what isn't real. But the cognitive approach basically says that faulty thought processes are part of the issue that causes cognitive explanation of schizophrenia, which is not really surprising, as it tends to be the answer to most things. So let's have a quick look at a Stroop test first of all. This is a classic way of assessing cognitive function. We're going to refer to it a little bit later on, but I want to start off this little session with us having a go at this. It's a little bit of fun, and also it's quite good for you. So if you've got someone around there to do it with you, have a go and do it in pairs. If not, just time yourself. What you do is the first one through, you go through and you just say the words. So you go blue, red, yellow, orange. And you do that all the way through until you've covered all of them. If you get it wrong, you've got to say that word correctly. So you got, I don't say the word correctly before you can actually move on. Then the second time through, instead of saying the word itself, you have to say what the colour is of the word. So that first line goes green, purple, yellow, red. And as you even hear my voice, I've slowed up a little there. Let's see if you guys slow down there on the second one too. Okay, so please have a go at that, and we'll look now at the next bit. Okay, so the cognitive explanation for schizophrenia by Frith. Frith is a really good one here. It's quite a detailed explanation, and it's quite a powerful one for us to use. So we're going to be focusing on this. And again, schizophrenia, according to cognitive approaches, kind of summed up here, is caused by the faulty signals being interpreted rationally. And that's quite important to wrap our head around. We try and do things right, and yet we've got irrational information. So let's look at the theory. So first of all, cognitive theorists, first of all, accept the biological deficits initially. Now that's a big thing. A lot of compromise coming in here. We've had in other places approaches being quite, oh, it's just my way, it's just my expression. But in schizophrenia, they start to kind of recognize other people a bit. So here, the cognitive approach recognizes that actually we have this problematic input coming in to our mind because we have problems with the areas of the brain with that dopamine hypothesis type thing, that the biological things that lead our brain to actually have input which is not accurate, which is not true input. So they recognize particularly the ventral stratum, reduced function there, and that's linking into negative symptoms of schizophrenia. And we see also the hallucinations linked to the reduced function in the temporal lobe. But the important thing is for the cognitive approach that they say that it's not that that's actually causing the schizophrenia. What's truly causing the schizophrenia is when we then try and make sense of this irrational, faulty information. So when, for instance, they start to ask information from other people to verify sensations or hallucinations which they are having. So, for instance, I've used the example of fire, but it could be of there being a person in the room, or that they saw a car go by. It could be a variety of different things. Well, other people deny it and say that's not the case. That's not accurate. And the more people that ask, the more people who are going to deny it, and they start to also treat the person oddly. Now, the person is still experiencing it. They're still seeing these things. They're still having these things being there. They're clearly still sensing it. As much as the desk in front of you, or the screen in front of you, where you're looking at this and picking this up from. So they argue in their minds, well, if I'm still experiencing it, but they can't see it, then it must be that some way they're sort of conspiring against me, or there's some sort of prank or some sort of thing there, that they must be lying to them. That's kind of the only logical conclusion that ends up being left to them. So we see a lot of people with schizophrenia developing, according to the cognitive approach, this level of sort of paranoia or persecution, so a delusion or persecution of conspiracies being ranged against them, because their logic says, if they can see it, if they can sense it, they can smell it, they can feel it, they can touch it, hear it, etc., it must be real. But they're experiencing it, they're sensing it, but everyone else is saying it's not real. So who do you believe, your senses or other people? People tend to believe their own senses. So therefore, others must be lying to them. So Frith said that when we look at the positive symptoms of the explanation for schizophrenia. So we look at the cognitive explanations, says that it's about meta representation. So where our thought processes go and where we reflect on those things internally, where we consider our own actions and goals and try to understand the thought processes of others. That is quite important, because Frith says we then have problems with the meta representation of our thought processes, leading to positive symptoms. Now, schizophrenics become unsure about what is actually happening and what is happening in their mind. So, for instance, if I'm having this conversation, am I having it out loud, or am I just saying it in my mind, thinking that I'm saying it? We'll have to check back on the video to see if it plays, and you'll let me know on that one, hopefully. So, why people are acting that way, why it's happening, we need to try and work out logically, is it just in our head or is it not? And we lose that ability to differentiate. So it might be that people start having those thoughts and saying those things and thinking they have a conversation with someone, but in actual fact, it's just been happening in their head. Or the reverse. They think they've just been thinking something, but they've actually been saying it loud. Or they become so paranoid that they've actually said a thought out loud, even though it's just been in their head, that they get upset and make big scenes. And we start seeing these more vivid symptoms that get them noticed, particularly with the positive symptoms. So as a result, they end up developing delusions to explain and make sense of a world that's becoming increasingly bizarre or unintelligible to them, based upon their logical assumptions and trying to understand the world. Then we look at the negative symptoms, we see that actually, and this links in with the Stroop test, which we did a little bit earlier. Most of the world that we engage with, we don't need to have that much active thoughts going on in order to make things make sense. We actually use a lot of automatic responses, or what we refer to as schemas. Remember the word schema, coming back from memory, coming back from the cognitive approach. So we use a lot of schemas to make the world kind of work for us, including, for instance, when we're reading the words in the Stroop test, we see we read the word blue, and because we're so used to reading the word and saying what it says, we don't even notice what the color is, so to speak. So when we're asked to do the Stroop test, we are then struggling in the second one because we've got to break with those schemas. Now, particularly for people with schizophrenia, they have issues in their central control. Now, in that situation, in that location, they are supposed to be able to switch on or off these automatic responses, these schemas. So particularly when they're not right for the situation, they should be able to stop them, go for something else, or process it more. But with the issue with people with schizophrenia, one or two things happen. Either when they should have an automatic response ready to go that leads to those things, those schemas don't kick in, leaving them seeming to have like speech poverty, or leaving them seeming unable to do things, or catatonic. But also we have them, they kick in when they shouldn't. and they keep on kicking in, they can't stop them, and that can make it really difficult for them to respond to a changing environment. So their actions and speech patterns may become quite confused and quite disorientated, because if things aren't following the expected route, that can lead to their automatic responses, their schemas, going wrong, and because their central control is not able to adapt and tweak these things quick enough, that causes problems. So Helmsley supported that, and again picked up the fact that schemas tend to break down in people with schizophrenia, so which we use to help process information and gauge the world, and as such, we end up with this disjointed thinking and action being demonstrated, as Frith had predicted. Helmsley finds. So that's a nice straight support for that part. Okay, let's have a quick look at some of the different sports. So we've got a classic one there. It wins the silver prize here. Yes, it is by Sterling. Sorry. So 30 schizophrenics compared to control of 18 non-schizophrenic patients, and took twice as long to complete the Stroop test. Remember, we did that earlier, showing the low level of function on the non-schizophrenics. As I say, do remember, please, we do need to refer to people as people with schizophrenia rather than schizophrenics. I've just been a bit naughty on the writing there, and I need to change that and have a go at myself about those things when I get a chance. So Frith in 1970 demonstrates an issue in schizophrenic thought processes using a card prediction task. So a nice classic triangle, square, circle type pattern, and you would make predictable patterns of those cards, and the person should be able to say what card's coming next, and they just weren't able to recognize those patterns. And that shows again that they aren't able to pick up and develop schemas effectively to deal with those situations, see their new things. So again, they argue that Frith says that is a central control issue, which is part of why they struggle to work effectively in the modern world. Meyer-Lindberg in 2002 found a link between excessive dopamine in the prefrontal cortex, where higher thought processes occur, and with problems in working memory. And we know as well that quite a lot of research has indicated that the working memory stores, central executive, all that sort of stuff is located in the prefrontal cortex, particularly in the left-hand hemisphere. So we see that as definitely support. We've got Bentel. Bentel did give a nice little study there, categorizing items, having difficulties doing that. It is again a problem of meta representation, because we can't picture what things are, we can't categorize them, which again is basically something we use schemas for. Recognizing what stationery is, recognizing what an animal is, all those sort of things. The ability to separate those things out, actually, that causes problems. So again, all these things support the idea that people with schizophrenia have issues with their level of cognitive functioning. Helmsley, again, just mentioning it, their approach is useful and leads to effective treatments, which we can use CBT later on and pick up a few studies from there to back this up. And obviously, CBT is a major one being used, and we can talk about it a little bit later on in the course. Garrity, however, points out, you know what? Is it really a cognitive? Is it really a psychological one? It's heavily reliant upon the biological approach initially, and doesn't really explain things fully on its own. So it's at best kind of offering us a partial cognitive explanation, a partially psychological explanation. And maybe it's not good enough. Maybe it's too sort of interactionist on those things. We got Komoto and Chase as well. So schizophrenia, when we're looking at this, the thought process as a person with schizophrenia is too erratic to be based upon a logical thought process has gone wrong. Simply put, the cognitive approach is arguing that we are trying to process the information we're getting through and act in a logical way. But the simple fact is that many people who have worked with people with schizophrenia have really struggled to kind of follow their thinking, even if they understand where they started and what they're going from. So the erratic nature of a lot of people who are chronically suffering from the condition shows actually maybe Frith is being a little bit over optimistic, and that's a lot more recent study there. A bit of Kane and Lentz points out the issue of the use of cognitive function as part of the diagnosis. That is it okay to use that? Is it okay to use it as part of the function of that and use that as a method to assess whether they are schizophrenia or not? But also, is that then to explain why schizophrenia is? There's kind of a little bit of debate around that there. We also, we can question, is it truly a cognitive one or diathesis stress one? And the cognitive elements showing up when we've got sort of problems there. Finally, we've got masses of evidence about the reduced function. But again, it's a classic. We've come at this again. It's a causation issue. Do we really have causational ability to state that here? No. Again and again and again, all of this research is correlational, and therefore we can only ever state that there's a relationship. There may be a causal relationship, but we can't actually prove it, and to do such research again would be massively unethical. So that's problematic. You don't need all of these, obviously. I would recommend you pick 4, maybe 2 good points, maybe 2 negative. That gives you kind of that balance and work through. But think carefully about which ones you choose to use, which ones are going to stick in your head, which ones are going to form the best criticism for you. Try and get a little bit of range, but try and get maybe some ones that kind of spark off each other a little bit as well. Okay. So here we go. There's a nice simple one. Discuss one cognitive explanation of schizophrenia, 8 marks. So 2 minutes. What I want to do therefore is just go through and plan that. Remember, you got 3 marks for description, 5 marks for evaluation. You're going to need 2 well-developed critical points. It's good if you can balance that out if possible. You need 10 minutes then to write that. So that's about the amount of time you have. You can give yourself up to 12 minutes, but don't give yourself any longer than that. You've got about a mark to about a minute and a half. Okay, if you do have additional time, obviously then you can give yourself another couple of minutes, but I want you to do that and have that done for next lesson. When we come back in, we're going to quickly go through and do a little bit of good old triad marking of that, so make sure you have your answer in with you for that. Okay, I hope this has been a good little quick whiz through. I've also going to attach some other things in that, and hopefully that will make sense to you. Thank you, folks.